Version 4.1. Initializing upgrades. Accessing peace. Existing without violence, with the ability to calmly resolve conflict. Downloading love. An overwhelming, deep, positive affection towards others. Activating liberty. Living your life as you see fit without infringing on the lives of others.
Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. I am your host, Darryl W. Perry, the Liberty Penguin, the Wombat, the uncut cocaine of libertarianism. And I've gotten several questions. I know this is not the Ask Me Anything, but I do want to address this, even though I did about a week and a half ago. There have been numerous questions about how many write-in votes did you get? And at this point, I don't know. Because the tabulations are still coming in, the write-in numbers in some states are not yet being publicly released. In some places, New Hampshire, one of them, the Secretary of State issued or publicly issued a limited tabulation to where they put some people and not others. Vermont did the same. And I've put in questions to both of those places of what was your criteria for who you decided to publicly list. The New Hampshire Secretary of State got back to me with some arbitrary number that's not in statute. I've not heard back from Vermont. A couple of other places, Oregon and Alaska specifically, have stated that they will not be breaking down the write-ins by candidate because the write-in votes did not equal a certain number. The total number of write-in votes, not for any particular candidate. So the short answer is, I have no clue. The long answer is, the world may never know. But I will definitely, when I get some kind of figure, I will let you know. So let's jump into the show prep that I have here. A couple of these were things that I had pulled up on Monday and then did the sort of eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And, you know, I'm still sort of flipping between the two and not really sure which one I'm going to go with, so I'll just pick one. And we will go with a short list and then get into a longer list. The first one is titled 9 Ways to Stay Mentally Strong in Your Busy Life. And I know there's 9 items on this list, but it's shorter than most of the list, if that makes any sense, because they don't have paragraphs written about each one of these things. So I'll just sort of jump through this fairly quickly before going over to the other item. Again, 9 ways to stay mentally strong in your busy life. Write down 3 things that you're grateful for every day. Now, this is something that it might wind up actually being fairly difficult for you to do. Especially if you might kind of feel depressed or maybe things aren't going right for you. And this definitely ties in with the other article. But yeah, try to, and this is their recommendation, try to write down 3 things that you're grateful for every day. I've been, for the last several months, answering to myself one thing that I'm grateful for. It would be, I'm not going to say, impossible, but there are days where, I'm just not feeling that good, and it's difficult to come up with one thing. And, yeah, I could wind up giving the same answer every day, but, that gets kind of, feels kind of like cheating, if you will. But coming up with 3 things for some people would be difficult. Something that I find to be fairly easy, never argue with strangers. And I have to ask myself, who does this? And I know that people online do this all the time, but really, like, when you're not online, if you're one of these people that, just enjoys getting into arguments online, are you somebody that will then wind up, just walking down the street and start arguing with people that you don't know? If you do, then you're not somebody that I want to hang out with. Number 3, celebrate your successes more often. Number 4, stop comparing yourself with others and focus on yourself. And this is something that, again, a lot of people have trouble with because, growing up, and I don't know if it was necessarily like this for you, but to some extent it was for me, to where even though I wouldn't be directly compared with my brother or any of my cousins, your brother wound up getting good grades in this class. Okay, well, that doesn't mean that I'm necessarily going to, because, this isn't something I'm interested in. Or, I was the only person in my family that wasn't interested in music. And that was kind of strange. It's one of those things of after many, many years, you're sort of preconditioned to compare yourself to others, and it's very difficult to break out of that mindset. Number 5 on the list, allow yourself to be vulnerable. And this is something that I'll admit I struggle with in certain situations. Partly because, I've had incredibly bad relationships before. So, something I struggle with. Number 6, declutter by throwing away things that you have not used in a long time. Yeah, this sounds kind of like I've got stuff that's, still in boxes from when I moved several years ago. I just need to go throw that away. But for some reason, I have been, busy with other stuff, and that's sort of an afterthought, right? So that is something that I need to do. Number 7, use more positive words. Number 8, cry when you're really sad. And this is something that a lot of people do not allow themselves to do, especially men, because we're told that real men don't cry. No, real men have emotions just like real women. Humans have emotions. And spend some time by yourself regularly. Stay tuned. This is Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
When you hear the word lobbyist, you probably think about greedy corporations, but not all lobbyists are the same. Some are fighting for the freedoms you hold dear. Liberty Lobby LLC is doing just that in New Hampshire, working hard to represent you, not some special interest group. You can help by going to libertylobby.xyz, where your contribution will give us the tools we need to ensure that your voice is heard. Visit libertylobby.xyz today to find out more. Coinbase is a simple and secure online Bitcoin wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin. Coinbase also allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin using a bank account or use their tools to accept Bitcoin as a merchant. Coinbase has more than 1 million consumer wallets and is trusted by over 25,000 merchants, including Overstock.com, Khan Academy, Reddit, and of course, FPP. Get started at coinbase.fppradio.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry, online at fppradio.com.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Changing gears here. And I told you that the second article would be related in some kind of way to a couple of the things on this list of ways to stay mentally strong in your busy life. It's how to get out of a slump and defeat the blues. And I know that a lot of people deal with, I'm not going to say depression per se, but extended unhappiness, if you will. And there are certain times of the year where, this affects me worse than others. And we're actually getting into one of those times right now where the darkness comes earlier in the day. Yesterday, I left the gym just after 5 o'clock, and it was already dark. That's just crazy to me. So, like the lack of sunlight does affect people by not providing, enough vitamin D and blah, blah, blah. And yes, I know you can take vitamins. But then there's also, things that birth dates and anniversaries sorts of things in this time of the year that I'll say it, they get me depressed and sad. So, yeah, this holiday time, basically from mid-November until the end of the year, I'm going to be a little bit more sad than normal. Dare say depressed, I don't know. I've never gone to a shrink because of it, partly because, what's the point of paying somebody a bunch of money to listen to me talk and probably not actually give me any real positive feedback and maybe just say, here, take some pills, when I can do what I'm doing now as my own sort of form of therapy and I don't have to pay you $75 an hour or more. Yeah, so I'll choose self-medication here. But what are some ways to get out of funk, defeat the blues? The article comes from Lifehack. It says, once upon a time, I was severely ignorant towards people who called themselves depressed. This from the author, not me. He says, I was harsh and angry at them because I thought of it as the simplest excuse they could find. Now, I can honestly say that this is not something you should learn from on your own experience. By nature, I'm a cynic and a pessimist, which only made it easy for depression to get me. If you have a mindset similar to mine, you should know that you're an easy target as well. All it takes is a little push, and you might not even notice how deep in you actually are until you break down into tiny puzzle pieces that are extraordinarily difficult to put back together. Like other illnesses of the mind, the cause of depression can be quite difficult to determine. Although there are familiar reasons, like trauma or grief, a person who has a loving family, an interesting social life, and a successful career can also fall to their knees beneath depression, and that's exactly what makes it so dangerous. And then they go in to some things, suggestions, if you will, on how to get out of a slump, get out of a funk, and defeat the blues. Keep your friends close, and he says, and your enemies even closer. You need to study depression because it's foul and it can sneak up on you. First, you need to understand a properly functioning brain and know about the chemistry balance behind it. When a person is depressed, the balance is being violated. It all starts with a small part of the brain called the hypothalamus, which is responsible for regulating emotions, libido, sleep, appetite, body temperature, etc. All the basic functions of your body are controlled by the hypothalamus. It also controls the pituitary gland, which is in charge of the primary hormones, including the happy ones. And so your overall happiness depends on this pea-sized part of the brain. Yes, so when somebody calls you a pea brain, I don't know if anybody ever has, but you've heard the insult, oh, you pea brain. They're probably, inadvertently talking about the hypothalamus. Therefore, when you're depressed, all of your emotions are located in the color spectrum that shows shades of blue. Your libido is practically non-existent, and your sleep habits and appetite go to either one of two extremes. So basically, the amount of dissatisfaction you have with your life dictates the chemistry in your brain. It's also a bottomless abyss. The author says, I see depression like a big cave that lures you in because it provides you with comfort in isolation. I'm sure you've watched Alice in Wonderland at least once in your life, and I'd like to remind you of the moment when she starts falling down the rabbit hole. The very same thing happens to people who start falling into the depths of depression. You don't know where you're headed, you don't want to get there, and it seems like a bottomless abyss. After the fear wears off, you decide to willingly trim the sails and ride the wave and decide to just go with it. That sort of limbo is low maintenance, and you can exist in it without having anyone's expectations to meet. Here, we arrive to the questioning everything phase, and not in a curious, healthy way, but regarding the meaning and point of existence and how random and banal everything around you is way. This is when I decided that there's no need to even leave my bed. And I'll have to say that I have been there. After I got a concussion a little over 5 years ago, and I've had a headache ever since, but when I first got that, and the headache was just really bad, and I could barely go to work, all I did was sleep, eat, lay in bed when I wasn't trying to work to try to make some money to pay the rent and feed myself. And it was a couple of months before I wound up getting on some medications that allowed me to actually wind up, working full time again. I almost lost my job because the headache was so severe. I could not stand to be at work for more than about 4 hours because I was always dizzy, and the headache, it was absolutely horrible. Stay tuned. There's more here on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
During the 2013 Porcupine Freedom Festival, Davi Barker presented an idea for a renegade psychological experiment. Since then, he has refined his idea and put his plan and research into writing. He explains, "We aim to show the world beyond a shadow of a doubt that power corrupts absolutely and corrupt authority deserves no obedience." Authoritarian Sociopathy is available from Amazon.com, all major bookstores, and now available as an audiobook. You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates, like Namecheap, Spendabit, and Amazon at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. Or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. That's shop.fppradio.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry, online at fppradio.com.
Hey, welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Continuing with the article about how to get out of a slump, defeat the blues, and get out of a funk. It can be difficult to recognize, at least before it's too late, and especially if you've never been in a similar situation before. We all have bad days every now and then, and when you're depressed, bad days turn into bad weeks turn into bad months, and sometimes bad months turn into bad years into decades. Unless you conduct healthy routines like spending quality time alone, introspecting every day, and being fully familiar with the demons of your subconsciousness, which, let's face it, a really, really small percentage of people worldwide, and most of them are professionally involved with psychology, you will not see depression coming. Depression is a darkness from within. That's reason enough to get very close with all symptoms that are its vanguard. Most vocabularies describe depression as a feeling of sadness, but that's only a mere beginning, because very soon you move on to hopelessness and severe guilt. Once you get acquainted with these dark shadows and they start following you around and messing with your mood, you should be able to notice a loss of focus and a significant decrease in your overall productivity. Accordingly, your confidence levels will sink to the bottom of the deepest seas, and you'll start doubting everything: your skills, your intelligence, and your own ability to make decisions. It will seem like your whole life is a delusion, that you can't rely on your friends or your family, so those connections slowly begin to dissolve. And, this is, again, something that in some ways I often question. Am I actually good at things? What exactly are my skills? Getting back into the article, the author here continues, this heaviness will become a physical burden, and tiredness will become your constant state. In order to silence your mind, your most probable consolation will be in the form of substance abuse, and chances are that you'll get pretty creative in that matter. At this stage, people who suffer from depression are brainstorming about different ways to harm themselves as well. Somewhere along this ride, the responsibilities you have towards your work will stop having any weight, and Worker of the Month will be the very opposite of what you are. The author says, for me, this happened in all aspects of life, not just the professional ones. And now he starts getting into some solutions. He says the best defense is a good offense. War is a common state in nature. Exchange of power is in constant flow. War should not only have a negative connotation because you can fight for a better life, a better job, or for the ones you love. Although the history of war is filled with ruthless dictators who want to conquer the world and redesign it in their own cruel image, those very monsters are an excellent background in a composition of a painting that shows heroes and demonstrates bravery. If there wasn't any darkness, we won't be able to recognize the light, right? So break the chains. You're faced with two options. You either let depression destroy you, or you can break the chains, which are nothing more than a figment of your own imagination. A strong one, for sure, but a figment nonetheless. So if you're capable of creating something that powerful, imagine what you can do when you're free of those heavy blue shackles. Strength comes from within. The author here says, I'm positive that people who love and care for you deeply will throw you a rope and try to get you out of the abyss. But until you're ready to grab it and open your mind to the world once more, their efforts will be in vain. If you're a control freak, such as I, and you think you can do everything by yourself without anyone's assistance, this may be a problem for you. He says, I was fully aware of how unhappy I am, but I needed a lot of time to realize that this is not a battle I can win without an army of supporters behind me. It's pretty selfish of you to think that you're alone in this, or that the whole world, or rather that you're alone in the whole world, because you're not, and neither was I. By refusing help, you're not only hurting yourself, but everyone around you. And if you don't care enough about yourself, can you find enough strength in you to fight the battles for other people, the people who love you? There's a little bit more to this article that I will get into, and as always, the link will be in the show notes. You can read it at your leisure, the entire thing, without my commentary. Article now gets into subcategory titled, Indulge Yourself. No matter if the blue period lasts for months or years, it will wreck you. The longer you allow it to linger on, the more of a ruin you'll become, until there's nothing left but foundations of a person you once were. The author says it's never too late to fight it off, and this is one battle you cannot always win, because not a cause in the world is hopeless. The bottom line is that you deserve to be happy, and you should do everything in your power to get rid of those negative thoughts and make things happen for you. Because of this fact, you can either admire the ruin you once were, or you can begin believing it was meant for them to get wrecked so that you can go back to a healthy part of the temple and move on from there. There's a little bit more. Stay tuned.
It is the year 91,001 BCE. Witness humanity's origins in Hyperchronius, a classic role-playing game for Windows PCs with a story like no other game before. The liberty-oriented experience that is not to be missed. Go to zog.ninja to get your copy of Hyperchronius today. Use the code FPP to get $1 off. Hyperchronius, zog.ninja, code FPP.
You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and Numery supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month through Patreon and get perks like ad-free versions of FPP Radio News and Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com.
Hi, I'm Nick Hazelton from the Anarcho-Yakutalism podcast, and you're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
Admire the ruins or use it as a foundation. Use it to build a healthy heart and move on. This image, the author says, worked for me just fine, and more than that, actually, because I know exactly how to reconstruct myself, and by which I mean I should do it. Or rather, and by which means I should do it. But start with baby steps, because too much of everything may just get you back in bed. As a matter of fact, don't get up yet. Surround yourself with everything you love. Books that make you see the world differently. Watch movies that strengthen your hope. Play music that awakens the most innocent feelings within you. Art is the most extraordinary creation of humankind, and it will make you see why your life's worth living. It's a hell of a journey, and it won't be easy. There will be times when you'll think that the abyss is a comfort zone you should return to. You will be exhausted. Disappointments will not stop coming your way. And it may feel like the world is one cruel place that's governed by fear. The scariest part of a roller coaster ride is the free fall, right? And it wouldn't be any fun without the scary part. So have faith in yourself. And again, as always, the link will be in the show notes. You can go back, read that at your leisure, again, without my commentary. And just want to remind you, if you like the show and you want to support the show, you can join the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and Numery supporters. fans.fppradio.com. You will get ad-free versions of this podcast, Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. You also get ad-free versions of the daily newscast. Yes, 7 days a week, there's a newscast, FPP Radio News. Again, find out more at fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com. And don't forget the free Rossathon coming up on December 4th. You can go to freeross.org to learn more about Ross's appeal. Donate to Ross's Legal Defense Fund, and hopefully we will wind up getting some good news about Ross, and hopefully that good news is that he will be leaving prison at some time fairly soon. And as always, don't forget, every Wednesday there's the Ask Me Anything. Send those questions over to ama@fppradio.com. Have a good weekend.
The podcasts of FPP Radio are licensed under Copy Heart. We believe that copying is a form of flattery and do not abide by the copyright laws. Those laws serve to restrict the flow of ideas which no one can really own. Copying is an act of love. Love is not subject to law. If you enjoy the show, consider joining the Fans program and get perks like ad-free versions of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio and FPP Radio News, and also get a copy of the monthly newspaper FPP News. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com.